Right there. Yeah, come up front, please. Join us. And there's free brownies. Hey, yo, there's brownies there. Please help yourself. You can't eat it all. So free brownies. Normal brownies. I was asked last session if there were special brownies. So
Hey, Zach.
Hey guys,
hi.
How are
how's
you
it
doing?
going?
Good, good. How are you?
And I am great. No slow days in Bitcoin world, so definitely keeping busy over here.
Good, good. Okay, so I was thinking maybe we could just give it like 2 more minutes and then let me make sure you can screen share.
Cool.
Okay. Just gonna make you co-host.
Awesome.
Hey. Um, you want to stick it? Yeah, because I don't think you said in the email.
I'll take cigarettes. Thank you. I'm bored. You try to ask. My wife, she can't be here, but. I know what I said already. Oh, no, my wife did, no. She wasn't, she was here last session, but she couldn't be there, so she just said, no, she didn't know. Yeah, yeah, but she just, she loves the club and she wants to support it.
Mhm.
Oh, I will, she'll be happy, of course, yes. She got it from what?
Okay. Okay, Zach, I'll stop share so you can share if you want.
Sweet. Do you think we're about ready? Should I go ahead and just share and kind of kick it off?
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. That's good with you.
Sweet. All right. Can you guys see?
Yes, perfectly.
Cool. Well, guys, pleasure to see you all over there and come speak with you. My name is Zach Young. I'm an analyst at Trammell Venture Partners here in my hometown of Austin, Texas. And, I'd love to tell you guys a bit about just kind of my Bitcoin story, how I got my job at Trammell Venture Partners, maybe what is, Bitcoin native venture capital in the first place, highlight some of our portfolio companies and some trends that we're seeing in the ecosystem. So I'll try to pause periodically for questions, and we can also do some Q&A at the end. But to start off, I think, I'll just kind of tell you guys my Bitcoin story, how I got here in the first place. So it actually started when I was a junior in college, just a few years ago. I was studying business econ and entrepreneurship at UCLA, and I knew that I liked investing and I was interested in kind of technology, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life quite yet. Um, I think looking back that I was kind of primed for Bitcoin in a couple of ways. One is, in my econ classes, the sort of Keynesian economic theory that I was learning felt really untethered from reality. It felt kind of like something was missing. And also at the same time, I was beginning to get interested in fintech startups and how they were, creating capital efficiencies and kind of, democratizing access to savings and investing and that sort of thing. And then in late 2020, Bitcoin got put back on my radar by one of my friends. He kind of gave me, a sales pitch and convinced me good enough to buy some. So I started paying attention. This was, kind of the beginning of that last big bull run. So, as the price went up, I started to pay more attention. I was more inclined to read that extra article or, watch that extra video. And as I did more research, I ended up buying more. The price would go up more. It's kind of this, this cycle of learning and kind of building conviction. I think number go up, the price going up is kind of one of the best educational tools out there, sort of in a roundabout way. And then towards the end of the school year, I was watching some presentations from the Bitcoin 2021 conference out in Miami. And that's kind of when I realized there might be something more here than just kind of pure speculation. And that was really the tipping point that led to this kind of crazy rabbit hole journey where I was reading all the books and articles that I can get my hands on. I started going to meetups. There's a picture from one of the meetups. I met like-minded people, and they would, point me in the direction of further resources. They would tell me about the companies they were building in the Bitcoin native space. I also learned about the Austrian School of Economics, focused on subjective value and also, how credit expansion leads to boom and bust cycles and stuff like that. That was a huge aha moment for me. I started to see how kind of the human hand on the money supply ripples through the economy in all sorts of ways. And, at the same time, I also saw how Bitcoin was really a revolutionary innovation in money. It was kind of like this step function improvement on the system that, those fintech startups I was interested in were just kind of iterating on in, kind of the old system. So going into my senior year, there was really not much else I could focus on. And I approached all my entrepreneurship classes with kind of a Bitcoin lens, started this club called Bitcoin Bruins to try to spread the word about Bitcoin. And, I figured it was a space with so much information asymmetry that, there was tons of opportunity for young people to get involved. And I wanted to get my, classmates excited about Bitcoin, both, as an asset and as an industry to potentially work in. And so by this point, I had really, I had my mindset that I'm going to get a job in Bitcoin. There's nothing else I could focus on. There was a handful of startups that I was looking at, and I knew I was also interested in the venture capital side. At the time, I was interning at an angel group, a group of angel investors, where I was doing similar things to how I envisioned a venture capital role would look like, sourcing deals and evaluating them for, potential investment. And this all kind of came together during winter break of my senior year back in Austin. I met Matthew Snow from TVP at a BitDevs meetup, this technical Bitcoin meetup. And, I told him I'm super interested in TVP and his work. So, we had a few calls where he would tell me more about his job and give me tips on, kind of joining the Bitcoin native industry. And he also told me that they're going to be potentially hiring within the next year. So I kind of monitored, all the jobs boards like a hawk. Eventually I saw TVP put out a job on bitcoinerjobs.com. And the description sounded like just the perfect fit for me. So except one thing, they were looking for more experience than what I'd had. So I got my application out as soon as possible. And eventually they got back to me and asked, if I'd consider doing an internship. That was about a year and a half ago. We chatted a bit more, and I started my internship October of 22, and then joined full time 6 months later. And there's a little kind of picture from my my TVP headshot. So what is TVP in the first place? TVP is a venture capital firm that invests in Bitcoin native startups. So our sort of mission here is to fuel what we think will become the iconic brands of the future that bring power and prosperity back to the individual by leveraging the Bitcoin protocol stack. So breaking all this down, I think, starting off with what is venture capital in the first place. Really at its core, it's the deployment of capital to a portfolio of high risk, but high growth potential opportunities. I just finished this book called VC and American History by this guy named Tom Nicholas, I believe. And he traces venture capital style investing all the way back to these rich families in New England in the 1800s investing in whaling expeditions. So they'd literally give capital to captains to go build a crew and go out and hunt whales to harvest their blubber to produce, oil for lighting lamps and stuff like that. And, some of the voyages might be unsuccessful. The ships might get lost at sea, or for whatever reason, they might have an unsuccessful voyage. But the idea for the investors was to invest in a portfolio of these voyages, and that the really successful ones would more than make up for the rest of them. And, venture capital isn't all that different today. It's an asset class that's governed by power laws where, the best one or two investments historically drive the lion's share of returns for any given fund vehicle. So TVP is a VC firm that invests in Bitcoin startups. We often get a question, why are you guys focused specifically on Bitcoin startups? And it really comes from a place of this firmly held belief we have that Bitcoin has already won the battle for the internet's base money. To explain why, I think it's probably helpful to share kind of the firm's history. So the co-founders, Dustin and Christopher, were friends going back, a decade before Bitcoin. They bonded over things like being technologists, advocates for privacy in the internet age. They were fans of Austrian economic theory, and they'd studied the earlier attempts at eCash that predated Bitcoin, like, Hashcash and B-Money. And Dustin was a security researcher and, kind of your typical hacker, tinkerer, cypherpunk. And so he was actually on the cypherpunk mailing list where Satoshi sent the white paper on Halloween 2008. And we think that Dustin ended up being the second node on the Bitcoin network after Satoshi. So he famously, exchanged emails with Satoshi, submitted a bug fix, also mined a bunch of early blocks back in the days where, it was the 50 BTC block reward. So kind of this crazy origin story. And he and Christopher teamed back up to manage Dustin's family office. And because of Dustin's early history with Bitcoin, both, mining the early blocks and accumulating Bitcoin, and also understanding, the technology clearly. So for those reasons, he started getting what we would call in venture capital deal flow, early on. People would approach him, founders, builders, and ask him to come take a look at their project. And so we saw a lot of, kind of Bitcoin native startups from the very early days. And then during the block size war, when there was kind of this fork in the road about how to scale Bitcoin and kind of, the direction of crypto in general, they had the opinion, go build stuff on all these other smart contracting platforms, but whatever you do, do not break the internet's money. We want Bitcoin to be as secure and decentralized as possible on its base layer, but in due course, as Bitcoin evolves and layer 2 protocols like the Lightning Network get built out, a lot of what was previously only possible elsewhere in crypto will become possible on Bitcoin. And we think, in the case where it's possible for an entrepreneur to build something both on Bitcoin and other crypto platforms, they will avoid, the platform risk elsewhere, meaning the risk that the platform that they're building on won't be around in 10 years or, will push a change that introduces some kind of critical vulnerability to their business. And increasingly, they'll choose to build on Bitcoin's secure, decentralized foundation. So that's kind of, one of the main reasons we're focused on Bitcoin native companies. And you've probably heard this term Bitcoin native a lot and might not have a clear understanding of what it means. So as we were putting together the first Bitcoin venture fund, we actually got together with some founders and peers in the industry to define the term. And take a sip of water real quick, but here's the definition. So we define Bitcoin native as, a company founded with the first principle that Bitcoin is the global monetary asset of the future and internet native digital cash. So the success of the company's product is mutually aligned with the success of Bitcoin. And the company uses the Bitcoin tech stack, meaning, Bitcoin layer 1, but also things like the Lightning Network and protocols built on top of Bitcoin in order to create value for customers. And innovations at various layers enable the business to flourish technically and also propel, business model innovation, meaning entirely new types of business models. And a key feature of our working definition is that we don't back companies that rely on protocol changes to core in order to be successful. We don't want to exert any influence over how Bitcoin core evolves. that's not really where our edge is. So in practice, what we do is invest in Bitcoin native software startups. And, as far as my role specifically, I consider myself really lucky because we kind of think of ourselves as a startup, which has been, this great opportunity for me to kind of wear a lot of hats and work across many different business functions. That being said, my kind of main focuses day to day are as follows. Deal sourcing, finding Bitcoin native startups who might raise money in the future. We want to make sure that we see everything happening kind of in the space. And then meeting with the founders, who are raising money for their startups. People call these, pitch meetings. Then evaluating deals, really just trying to get a deep understanding of their business and the market that they're going after. I'm also part of the investment committee where we discuss, all the deals that we see and determine whether or not they're a good fit for us. And then supporting our portfolio companies, we don't just kind of make an investment and then say, you're on your own to the entrepreneurs. We like to think of ourselves as co-company builders, really, alongside our founders. So we try to do anything we can to move the needle, and really just, supplement the skills of the founding team. So in practice, this could be helping them prepare for future financing, business development, high-level strategy, help with key hires, really whatever the needs are and anything we can do to kind of move the needle. Also research, for me, digging into kind of frontier areas that are emerging and finding out who the builders are and help build kind of internal theses at TVP about where potential business opportunities might arise. So for example, when this communications protocol called Nostr came out, I kind of led the research there, and that sort of thing. So, and also, much more on top of that, operations, marketing, really whatever I can do to kind of add value wherever our business needs are. I try to jump in and do what I can. Before I talk about some of our portfolio companies and some trends that we're seeing, now might be a good time if you guys have any questions.
We'll have any questions? Okay, I have a question, and also preface, you don't have to answer this if maybe you can't answer it, but since you're on the research, you're seeing everything, is there a obvious hole that you're kind of noticing of, oh, I'm not seeing anything in this area, but I wish something was happening or developing in this area?
That's a good question. I think the only areas that, let me put it this way. As soon as things become possible on Bitcoin, it feels like people kind of rush to build and fill those gaps.
Mhm.
So for example, there's some really exciting stuff kind of on the horizon for the Lightning Network specifically. You're going to have things like asset issuance. And I think, when you have new use cases, it'll bring in new types of developers and new pairs of eyes, on the protocol itself. And, entrepreneurs will dream up all kinds of amazing things. So really, I'm just excited for a lot of those kind of tech enablements. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your question, but I think in general, there's just an exponentially growing amount of activity in Bitcoin native.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So yeah, what are some examples of our portfolio companies? I want to start off with Unchained Capital. Unchained builds Bitcoin native financial services. Bitcoin is kind of this new paradigm in money, like we talked about earlier. And with that comes some new financial considerations and different types of products that people might desire. So their flagship product is what they call collaborative custody, which is essentially, a multi-signature vault with 3 private keys that it takes 2 keys to spend from. So customers hold 2 keys, Unchained holds 1. So in the nightmare scenario where, you lose one of your keys and it's back up, Unchained can sign with their key and kind of help you, get everything moved over to a new vault where all the keys are secure. It's super high touch. They make the setup and everything really, really easy. And then on top of that, they offer a number of services, to clients, including Bitcoin-backed US dollar loans. You can buy and sell Bitcoin directly from your cold storage vaults, Bitcoin self-custody IRAs, and a lot of really cool enterprise focused services as well. And, just for some stats, Unchained now has over $5 billion US worth of Bitcoin on their platform, and they've originated 500 million of loans, and notably have had, over the years, zero capital losses ever on their Bitcoin backed loans, which is kind of unheard of in lending. So lots of really cool stuff to come for Unchained. You can check them out, unchained.com. Another one I want to highlight is Synota. And the reason I chose Synota was I think it's just an amazing example of entrepreneurs attacking a problem that the Bitcoin tech stack can uniquely solve. So the co-founder and CEO, Austin Mitchell, he's got a PhD in energy and public policy from Carnegie Mellon, and he went on to work in the risk and forecasting departments at some large energy suppliers and utilities. And a big problem that plagues the energy industry is that, due to the inefficiencies of the financial system, energy producers don't get paid for the energy that they route to customers for, sometimes up to 90 days. So the generators have to account for the default risk of their customer base, meaning the risk that one of their customers won't pay. So this cash lag effectively adds, 10 to 20% to the end cost that consumers of energy have to pay. So what Synota is doing is they're building a solution using the Lightning Network with its instant, finality of settlement and really low transaction fees to allow the energy generators to get paid for the energy kind of as it's being delivered. So that drives, some real market efficiency, and it's kind of a win-win for all parties involved. And they also take care of the on-off ramp so that customers don't have to worry about, things like the Bitcoin price and compliance and custody issues that kind of arise if they don't want to deal with, Bitcoin as this kind of scary asset. So yeah, really excited about Synota. And I think it's this great example of how Bitcoin can solve problems in, all these kind of adjacent different industries. And yeah, we're starting to see a lot more of these types of innovations, entrepreneurs coming from place of subject matter expertise in, all sorts of different fields, and seeing how Bitcoin is a useful tool in attacking some problems in those fields. And yeah, so I want to show you guys this slide from this research brief we put together last year, where we gathered really comprehensive data on the entire early stage Bitcoin native ecosystem for 2021 and 2022. 2022 was obviously this massive down year for crypto spot prices. And for crypto VC, it was about flat year over year in terms of the number of deals that got done. But for Bitcoin natives specifically, it was actually this, amazing breakout year with, over 52% year over year growth in terms of deal count. And so why is this? In short, it's because, like I said, what is possible to build on Bitcoin is rapidly expanding. There's the development of the Lightning Network, which enables new types of businesses, like Synota, for example, was one of the big drivers of this growth in 2022. And we haven't released the 2023 data quite yet, but I'll give you guys kind of a verbal sneak peek. For a number of reasons, 2023 was this massive down year for venture capital in general and for crypto VC overall. But within crypto, Bitcoin is yet again a major growth category in terms of the number of deals that are getting done. So alongside, Lightning, other protocols like Fedimint, which is this federated eCash protocol on top of Bitcoin, alongside developments like Ordinals and Nostr and all these other things kind of working together and also contributing independently to this kind of larger design space where entrepreneurs can think up all sorts of new things to build on Bitcoin. So where we're at today, there's a lot of buzz around things like rollups on Bitcoin, and on the horizon, like I said, we'll have asset issuance directly on the Lightning Network. So things like stable coins on Lightning will be possible, and inherit the speed and the really low cost of Lightning Network, and tons of other cool stuff kind of on the horizon. So now is really an amazing time to be looking at the Bitcoin native ecosystem. I'm super excited about kind of what's on the horizon. I think there's so much opportunity for young people like you guys to get involved because, there's still a relatively small group of people who not only get Bitcoin, like what Bitcoin is, but also see the opportunity in the Bitcoin native ecosystem, how to use the technology. So I'll kind of leave it there, a really great time to get involved. If any of you guys are ever building in the space and thinking about, raising some capital, please reach out, of course. Happy to chat. And also feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you're ever coming through Austin, be happy to, grab a coffee or something like that. But that's all I got for you guys today. Happy to take any additional questions. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Zach. Okay, does anyone have any questions, or I have, yeah, Sal.
Cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
and maybe you can unmute that if you want, or if you can still hear, you come over here.
Hey, Zach.
Use my computer.
Let me do this one.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you great. No worries.
Thank you, Zach. Sal, first year MBA student here. Thank you for sharing all this. Super exciting. And hey, I would love to hear your high level take of how do you segment your research when it comes to the geography of, there's so much developing going on within the Bitcoin ecosystem. How do you even start to focus and support those folks, particularly with the regulatory component that some geographies are not so friendly, other ones are more friendly. So how can you, what is sort of TVP's perspective on the geography approach to supporting the overall ecosystem? We'd love to take your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me coming into TVP, before I started, like I said, I started in October after graduating college in June. And so I spent those 2-3 months just, learning every single thing I possibly could about Bitcoin technically, and trying out, tinkering with every project in the space. And it felt like a full-time job, just trying to keep up with everything that was going on. Since joining, TVP has kind of this recognizable brand for Bitcoiners, given Dustin's kind of early history. So in some circles, we get a lot of inbound deal flow. So people will reach out directly to us when they're kind of in the early stages of building. And that's something we really like. We like to engage kind of early and be sort of thought partners, and, have entrepreneurs not just come to us and speak with us when they absolutely need the capital. It's good to kind of build a relationship early. And we also have an amazing kind of team of advisors and also kind of friends throughout the industry who will help us, point out certain areas that we should maybe look into more, and that sort of thing. So for me, when I'm kind of trying to figure out new areas to research, I think about where are our gaps as a firm between our advisors and, kind of our current network.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure. thanks for the question.
Bruno.
Would you have any recommendations for someone who's just starting out in the space to get caught up in?
Zach, could you hear that? Okay.
Was
hear.
any recommendations for someone just starting in the space,
Starting
kind of resources, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wish there was kind of a central hub for just tracking all Bitcoin native activity. There unfortunately isn't really. I think the Lightning Labs newsletter is a great way if you're interested in Lightning specifically, and kind of some of the things it interacts with, like Fedimint, for example, is interoperable with Lightning or will be soon. They kind of do a great job highlighting all of the projects that are announcing new products or new updates that have anything to do with Lightning. So I would recommend the Lightning Lab newsletter, but really just in general, kind of, Twitter is a great resource, honestly, kind of going down rabbit holes there, following things you're interested in. Also going to meetups, BitDevs meetups were super useful for me specifically. And I would kind of meet people who are building in different areas on Bitcoin. I met some people at Unchained early and, would meet Lightning developers, and I would just kind of pick their brains and really just follow my own curiosity. I think that's just kind of a good practice in general. Just follow your curiosity. It's sort of the best way to be engaged with learning and I think learn effectively.
Zach, kind of on that question, but are there any common factors amongst founders or, companies in your portfolio that succeed, kind of traits to develop or embody?
I think something unique about Bitcoin is we get a lot of builders who, look very different in terms of their background and their experience. I think in general, just kind of being really curious and kind of open-minded is a good trait in general. I don't really think there's specific traits that we look for, like, oh, this person is not this one thing or is, or has a certain other trait, therefore we're going to back them or not. But in general, just, being good to work with and curious is really important. We actually, something that I've heard a few times now is the average relationship between an early stage investor and a founder actually lasts longer than the average marriage. So it's really important to kind of, build a relationship with that person and understand that you guys can, work, or understand if you guys can potentially work together for 10, 15 years and have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. So I guess on what you just said, after you make an investment, and maybe this is more in your day-to-day role, what does that relationship look like? Like, how often do you meet, or, you've made the investment, what next?
Sure. So yeah, definitely a little out of my sort of strike zone. I mean, that definitely flows up more so to the partners who have, tons of experience actually building companies and sitting on boards, that sort of thing. As for me, I try not to be, I don't want to take up too much of their time. I mean, these are going to be some of, the busiest people you ever meet, right? They're kind of trying to make the impossible happen by building, a company. So I try not to take up too much of their time, but if there's something that is an obvious gap, I'll try to add some value there. Or if we know that they're hiring for a position, I'll kind of put some feelers out. And I'm just in all the networking that I do, all the conferences I attend, the research I do, I always approach that from a place of how can we help our portfolio? Maybe this would be a potential customer or potential key hire to watch, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more question, but does anyone else have a question? No. Yeah.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for today. Also first year MBA student. My question was about your portfolio company. So the Unchainable, you said the customer has 2 keys while the startup has 1 key. this contrasts to the idea of decentralized finance, and I was curious whether the customers make a problem out of that, and how do you approach this centralized company with finance?
Yeah, so the key in the kind of collaborative custody model is that you need 2 out of the 3 keys to unlock the vault. So if Unchained Capital, turned malicious, or, their key was compromised for whatever reason, they wouldn't be able to access or spend from your vault. And also they really thought carefully about, maximizing the security of their platform. So they even built this entire open source platform called Caravan, so that in the case where something happens to Unchained or they shut down as a business for whatever reason, you could actually use the open source software Caravan to recover your vault and that sort of thing. So the collaborative custody part is really just in that nightmare scenario where you lose one of your keys. That's when you can kind of call Unchained to help you recover and spend from your vaults. But they can never do anything to steal your funds.
And we haven't talked about hardware wallets yet. So just for context, you could have your Bitcoin on an exchange, which I said, get your Bitcoin off the exchange, self-custody. Or you can have a key, which like a ledger looks like a flash drive just in your mind. And that has a seed phrase. I'll show you this all later, but it's like 12 words, and those words are kind of really your Bitcoin. But when Zach is saying key, he's referring to that hardware wallet. And so, you have 2, and then Unchained has 1, and it's kind of like a digital safety deposit box, and you need 2 out of the 3 keys or hardware wallets to unlock it. Is that a helpful context for some people? Yeah. So it's still decentralized. Like it's just meant to be helpful so that there's less like single points of failure. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. What's that? Okay. And then I guess just final question, any general career advice or skills or, I don't know, tips that you've picked up on that have been really helpful that you would recommend to others?
Yeah, I mentioned, following your curiosity. That definitely really kind of paid dividends for me. Also, just sort of taking risks, putting yourself out there. When I got really into Bitcoin, going into any sort of meetup or reaching out to people online to have a conversation, it was certainly kind of scary sometimes to go out in a room full of technical people who I think are 100 times smarter than me, and I've never met any of them in my life, and I feel really naive around it. Like it's great to put yourself in these environments, and you learn so much in the process, and those kind of open so many doors for me. So really just putting yourself out there. You can also do that, on Twitter and by writing and stuff like that. And find ways to get involved and follow your curiosity. Also going to those meetups. When I had the Bitcoin Bruins Club that I was working on, kind of that was my thing, and sort of I think having a thing that you're working on, a project, is helpful, and it helps people figure out ways to help you and get involved. And also, you guys are in such a great position. If you're a humble and passionate and curious student, people will be super willing to help you and give you some of their time. I found that Bitcoiners especially are very gracious with their time, and just want to help people kind of achieve success in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Zach, thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and all of this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing, guys. This has been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me. And like I said, feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to chat, point you guys in the right direction.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. Have
Thanks,
a good rest
y'all.
of your day. See you.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. Okay, we will switch. Okay, so I have kind of follow-up lesson to all of this as usual. Okay. And then we can turn this part off. So yeah. So. Okay. So yes. Okay, news app update. This was pretty cool. Kind of just this March 4th. There was a correction. It wasn't exactly Stanford's endowment, but kind of let me get this right. It's the Blythe Fund, which is a part of the expendable funds pool for Stanford. They made 7% of their portfolio Bitcoin. And I linked in here like the pitch that they used and everything. That's pretty interesting. And then this is from, I think this was actually last week, but more emails were released between Satoshi, and I forgot, let me put his actual, it's right here, Marty, and then let me put this back. So I put the link in there, but if you're interested, you can kind of read through it. And then, yep, so just some world. So Egypt, they had their currency recently devalued 40%. So like just imagine like going to sleep and then like your currency has just devalued 40%. And I put this in because later we'll talk about kind of the IMF and human rights, but this is kind of effect of that. And then I don't know, so Zach started with, number go up tends to kind of bring people in. Did anyone see any like on the news kind of Bitcoin's price action recently in the past? Yeah, so it's now kind of recovered, hit its all-time high again. And it's now like the 5th largest base money, and its market cap surpassed silver just the other day. So I mean, it's going up forever. It's a lot of people say. And then, so I had seen this image before, but someone posted on Twitter again, and I just think it's like, I know I've reiterated the network community aspect of Bitcoin a lot. And Zach just talked about Lightning. We're gonna have actually someone from Lightning Labs come in and talk, Elizabeth, come in and talk in a couple weeks. But this is just like a whole picture of the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, and I think it just helps put into perspective, all the people a part of this community, and it's interesting to see. Okay, so I want to add on to some of what Zach was saying about the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then I think it's really relevant. Like education is great, but we're in school, like we want to get a job, participate in some areas. So I want to do my best to try and make that a little bit easier or more clear, because it can be difficult. So that's what I'm going to share over the next couple slides. But I really like this. I'm paraphrasing from this woman, Rachel Geyer. And you don't have to work for a Bitcoin company. You can kind of be the Bitcoiner in your company. And so, I think eventually every company will kind of become a Bitcoin company. Like Reddit now holds Bitcoin in their balance sheet in their treasury. So, it's just the most stable, like it's now the 5th largest base money. Like it's going to be a part of all of them. So you don't have to just graduate and work for a Bitcoin company. And as I started like the whole club, like Bitcoin is just a tool. Like, you can take it or leave it. So that's just a preface here. But I put together a spreadsheet, which I'll show you. And it's not perfect. I'm going to work on updating it, but let me make it a little bigger. I had a list of companies, and then I just went through the sponsors of the Bitcoin 2024 by Bitcoin Magazine conference, and I put them in here. But I think this has 200 companies on here, 214. And I need to update it more and more, but I put in different tags, like if it's VC, so like here's Trammell, policy, education, financial services. There was one accounting company, Bitcoin mining, if it's an ETF, Lightning, education. So you can kind of just Control F and see what's popping up for you. Wallet, that was another one that I put in. And then I just put in like 1031 is another Bitcoin VC, Trammell. So you can Control F and see, who's a part. Ego Death is another one. You can just kind of see where they are. So hopefully, this isn't ideal, but it's something. And then you need Twitter for this, but this is a list of 1,000 Bitcoin companies. And so I was trying to put this all into a spreadsheet, but I didn't quite figure out how to do it effectively. but if you're curious, you can kind of take a scroll through here and it's just like all Bitcoin related companies on here. And then you can, learn more about them. So there's that for you. And yeah, I'll work on adding more descriptions so it's easier to control F, but it's a start. And we'll just pop back over here. And then, okay, so for instance, Zach said like he found his Trammell job because of Bitcoiner jobs. So there's Bitcoiner jobs, Bitcoin Talent Co. These are kind of two good places to look for. But also I really kind of can't emphasize enough just like messaging on Twitter, someone on Bitcoiner is sending them an email. Because especially internships, the jobs aren't posted there. You kind of have to ask and see. And, Bitcoiners are really friendly, like want to see you succeed, want to be helpful. And so let me see. I'm going to skip around in the slides a little bit, but so I think I verbally mentioned this, but the Cornell Bitcoin Club is kind of the guinea pig of this initiative that I launched last week when I wasn't here. So Generation Bitcoin is a nonprofit kind of helping, young people learn about Bitcoin, and I have been involved with them for a couple of years now. But we just launched last week the Bitcoin Students Network. So it kind of sits, Generation Bitcoin as the nonprofit, and it sits under it. But essentially, we wanted to kind of provide resources in one, like how do you start a Bitcoin club? So like what we've done here, educational, like a repository of, lessons and meetings, financial help start clubs. But then another critical piece is kind of partnerships with industry and individuals. And so we have put together an advisory board of 12 kind of Bitcoiners in the space. And we have 5 different sub teams. And one of those is career development. And so Jeff Booth is one of our general advisors. He's started another Bitcoin BC amongst many, many other different involvements, which you can read about here. Michael Riani is the Bitcoin product lead at Cash App at Block, and he has been at Tesla and Apple and loads of experience. And then we have finance and operations, Lightning Labs, Zach mentioned. So Lucas works there amongst, they all do tons and tons of stuff as a recurring theme. But we have like a Bitcoin community relationship. So exactly, talking to companies in the Bitcoin space. And then, career development opportunities. So Eric is the co-founder of Bitcoin Talent Co., which is one of the different job sites that I posted up here. So he'll be a great resource. Martel, another, incredible resource. I mean, they all are, but kind of wanted you to know this exists. And then also the critical piece is, and sorry, we got to work a little on the visualization of the map. But maybe let me pop over to the Twitter. We are already in 12 countries. And so kind of make visible the network element of this. So like, it's not just, us here on this campus, like there's other students around the world that are also kind of a part of this network. So I'll pop back over here, but wanted you to know that this exists and trying to build out all of these resources to make it easier. And then, okay, so where was I the past week? Why we didn't meet? I was at a Bitcoin conference and the trailer is really good. So I thought I'd just share it. It's only a minute, but it kind of gives you a sense. We were in Portugal and on an island, and the conference was also put on by this organization, Free Madeira, and kind of like orange pilling, integrating Bitcoin into the island. And so let me just play that video.
In the year 2024, the southern city of Atlantis will return. The first Bitcoin conference on the Atlantic Ocean. From March 1st to the 3rd, we are going to transform the stadium to a Bitcoin stadium. Jack Dorsey, Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, And many, many more Bitcoiners are joining Bitcoin Atlantis.
So anyways, I then will, I'll put the PDF in the document of all the different panels, but I just pulled out a couple that I'd recommend you watch, and they're all kind of time-stamped. So Michael Saylor was excellent. And then Jeff Booth was also really good, who's one of the general advisors of the Students Network. And then Jack Mallers, and his was actually a lot on time chain, not blockchain, which was our second lesson. So you might find that interesting. And then I put in just the different ones that I was on. So I did Bitcoin education at the university and country level. And then onboarding new generations, and then a global rise in consciousness. So maybe this one would be the most interesting because it's very down the rabbit hole, like not something we've really discussed yet, but maybe you find it interesting. And yeah, so I would just, you can also, I'll put the PDF of all the different agenda, but if you go to just their YouTube, which I linked here, all the live streams are there. You can kind of scroll and find what's interesting to you if you want. I know we have a lot of demands on time, so maybe, you know, you don't want to do that, which is totally okay. And yeah, just again, the student pass, if you are interested, kind of always keep that there. And then, yeah, I guess a picture. So we officially launched it there, which is kind of cool. And I'll share all the information kind of for joining that. I don't know if anyone else experienced, like, it was like a lot of servers were down earlier this week. So Typeform is what we use to kind of register interest, but I don't know, all those servers are still down for our forms. But yes, does anyone have any questions, or I guess I think most of you have already done all of this, just like the Twitter reminders, but yeah, any questions, anything I can do for you all? No, good. Okay, well, cool. Thank you all for coming. And next week we have a guest speaker as well. She went to Cornell, she's an alumna, she started the Cornell App Dev, and she, her name is Manuela, but she works at Strike, which is it's like a Lightning kind of company, and it'll be focused like UI UX product, but she's great. So definitely recommend you all come for that as well. Yes.
Thank you.